We talked. The big news is that Mike McCarthy will be back after that 48-32 drubbing, and it wasn't that close. It wasn't even close to that close at the hands of the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round of the playoffs last weekend. And the question now, and to me it's not much of a question. I think it's got to happen. But Dak Prescott. So Dak had a great season. I think clearly his best ever. And actually,
I don't know. I always thought that the year with Ezekiel Chris, where he wasn't
as a rookie.
I don't know. Yeah, like I just thought the way that team was. I thought that team was better. Didn't they win a playoff game?
I'm talking about individually.
Okay, I'm just saying. I thought he was a better player during that stretch.
No, I mean, he wasn't care. He was a game manager, which I think is what he should be. But I mean, individually, I thought he was clearly the best.
He was sixth in MVP that year. That year.
Well, he's gonna be higher than that. He's gonna probably be second.
He's gonna
probably be second. Yeah, I think
Brock
so.
Purdy
I
be
think
second?
third at the lowest.
Third, okay.
I think third at the lowest. Look, he did throw 37 touchdowns in 16 games 2 years ago. This year threw 36, which led the league. 10 interceptions that year, 9 this year. Threw for more yards, but again, he played more games. He's had,
we're just splitting hairs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm just saying, yeah.
I just thought this was the first year where he looked elite to me, and like he carried the team. He was their best offensive player, with all respect to CeeDee Lamb. And in the playoffs, all of that changed. So, Rob, the question is, now he's got one more year left on his deal, but he's got a $59 million cap hit. You heard Randy tell us that, it's going to be tough to build around him with that type of cap hit. So usually a team will give a guy a contract extension and spread the money out so he won't count as much against the cap. But if you're Dallas, what do you feel like? I'll just say this. I would sign him. I don't want to make him the highest paid player in the league. I want to negotiate with him. We'll see what he wants. But I just feel like, Rob, there's too many teams. We look at Pittsburgh. We look now at Atlanta. When you don't have that quarterback, man, it is tough sledding. And now they've got one that's not great, but he's, any given year, he might be a top 5 guy. This year he was definitely a top 5 guy. Next year maybe he'll be a top 10 guy. But I think he's good enough if you have a strong run game, which they really didn't have this year. Put the stronger run game, get a meat eater in the backfield to balance out Tony Pollard, and Derrick Henry's available. I mean, get Derrick Henry if you can, and then I think you got a run game to bolster what Dak can do as a passer. And then, of course, the defense has to improve some. But that's what I would do, Rob. What would you do with that?
I would move on from Dak Prescott. Whatever I need to do, trade, get him to agree with because I think he has a no-trade clause. We had Clarence Hill Jr. on.
You'd have to.
So I'd have to get him to agree with it, that we want to move on. I just think you know what he is, and it's not good. And I would take a chance with trying something else. I get it, Chris. You know what he can do. You know he can win you 12 games. You know what kind of numbers he can put up. But for Dallas, I'd rather win 9 games and get in the playoffs with somebody who I'm not convinced is going to wet the bed when the time comes. And maybe you have a younger quarterback. I don't know. I didn't see enough for Trey Lance. He was drafted high. Somebody thought he was good enough to do what they did, to trade picks and all that I just wouldn't be against it. I know what Dak is, and I would take the unknown over the known. And that's where I am, Chris. I can't give you that whoever you get is for sure going to do what Dak didn't do. But I'm pretty convinced that Dak is not going to, at year 8 or 9, and whatever he is in the league, is going to be somebody different. Well, this was the year to be different for me, and he wasn't different.
Rob, you said it at the top of the show. Peyton Manning used to get criticized for not being able to get it done in the playoffs. And ultimately, he was able to get it done in the playoffs. At least once.
But there's only one difference with Peyton Manning and Dak Prescott.
He's a better player, obviously.
Peyton Manning had like 5 MVPs.
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking about
Right. I
ultimately,
know.
we're
I'm
talking
just
about,
saying.
winning the Super Bowl.
Right.
He was better than Dak. There's no doubt about that. But I just think, Rob, like I said, I would not take the risk. Now, what you're advocating is what San Francisco's approach is, Rob. I mean, if you get rid of Dak, you're probably getting a young quarterback who's not making a lot of money. Maybe you draft a guy, or you go out there and get kind of a Baker Mayfield type who's not making a lot of money, but is
And look where he is, a game
good.
away from the NFC Championship game.
So let me ask you that. So if you're I'm sure Tampa would trade Baker Mayfield for Dak Prescott. And would you do it? Because, so let's say Dallas could get Baker for $30 million a year.
I just don't see Tampa Bay. I don't think that they would do it. They got a quarterback that's not making a lot of money, Chris.
So you don't. Oh,
I'm just saying.
They don't have to pay him.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I don't know what I think.
He ain't gonna get no Dak
30-ish.
money. Yeah,
No.
but no Dak money is what I'm saying. I hear what you.
But
I'm
let's
just
say
saying.
they would. Would you rather
Yes.
have Baker Mayfield?
I would
than
take
Dak
Baker
Prescott?
Mayfield. Yes, I would. I would.
Period. Or you think he's better, or just because
I just think
less
that
money?
I just think that the less money, and he won that. Cleveland hadn't won a playoff game in 20 some odd years when he won that game. What he did this past week against Philadelphia was shocking, and how they dominated and what he did. If there weren't a few drops, they would have scored 40 some odd points easily. And I'm not saying he's going to do that to the Lions or whatever, but if he beats the Lions on the road in the Dome and they go to the NFC Championship, even if they lose, it will be somewhat of a validation that this guy is a pretty darn good player. Not great, Chris, but he can play. And I want somebody who, if you're Dak, you've had chances. That terrible game against the 49ers, Chris, a couple years ago at home. Remember, the offense was awful.
Last year he had a bad game against them. 2 interceptions.
Right. I'm just saying, like, this is a pattern. It's not like he he had a bad day at the office and you just look at it that way and you say, oh, no, otherwise he's been great in the postseason or really good. No, he hasn't been.
No, you're right. I mean, I can't defend that, but I just wouldn't. I would. It's the price of doing business in the NFL.
No, I get it. I get it. You're stuck. Right. You're stuck, and I know that they're just going to just give him the money because they have no choice, and we talked about it before. They set this whole bad thing up, Chris, because they didn't sign him when they were supposed to, and it cost them a lot more money.
Right.
Like, so the Cowboys are at fault here. I'm not blaming Dak. If you're in line and they got to make you the highest paid quarterback and you just had another stinker in the postseason, you're not going to turn the money down. And, Chris, what you're saying is logical about Dak negotiating with him. I doubt, very seriously, I give it a 1% chance that he's going to take a lesser deal because he's going to own up to not playing well.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. But I would just try to sell him on, look, I mean, he's going to get 50+ million.
God.
But I would try to sell him on, less so we can build around you. And, you would think maybe, and I don't blame him if he doesn't, Rob. I'm not judging him on that. But sometimes a guy might say, you know what? I mean, that's obviously a ton of money. It's not embarrassingly low where, you know what I mean, where it looks like I really took a lot less than I should. I'm just not the highest paid guy. And I haven't delivered what I want to deliver. So, and I want to get better players around me. So maybe, you would hope a guy might say that. If he doesn't, again, more power to him. It's his choice. But I would think that, you might look at doing that because he's got to be disappointed in himself too. But yeah, I would definitely bring him back. Rob G, what would you do if you
where
bring
are you?
him back or let him go?
It's a tough question again because I don't know who you would replace him with.
No, I get that. But Trey Lance is sitting there. I'm just saying, Rob.
Right.
I mean, it might be Cooper Rush. He might be better than
knowing Jerry
Jones.
Jones. He's very, loyal
he was
guy.
high on him. You remember that? They were going crazy over
He could be
Rush.
starting for several teams, I think, in this league, and we got him on.
What they go
Thanks,
4-1
Jerry.
with him last year?
Yeah, I mean, look, Dak Prescott is a regular season quarterback. And there are several quote unquote regular season quarterbacks in the NFL. So even if you were to replace him, though, the chances that you would get an upgrade is slim to none. But to Rob's point, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expect different results.
Do you guys think?
And the clock is ticking on. If you're Jerry, Chris, aren't you like?
Oh, well, that's why I would have went
I
at Bill Belichick. But do you guys agree with me? I think you can win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott as your quarterback. If you have
I'm not convinced. With him. I'm not convinced. I know lesser quarterbacks have won Super Bowls, Chris. I'm not saying he didn't have any talent.
Right.
I'm just not convinced because of the mistake factors that go with Dak. So I'm not.
And it's
convinced.
Interesting, Rob. This year, 9 interceptions, which was great. And then he throws 2 in the first half of a playoff game. And Rob, Green Bay was 31st in the league in interceptions. So it's not like they picking teams off regularly.
Right. And it was Chris.
They only had 7 in the whole season.
What they have?
2
was it punt, interception, and pick 6? Is that what the first 4 drives were? Something like that, right, Rob G?
Yeah,
something like that.
And I know this is not like real analysis, but this is something I fundamentally believe to my core. Dak Prescott sweats entirely too much for me to trust him in a big spot. Like if you watch historically,
a lot of people thought he looked
nervous.
He
looked I know this is not like real football.
No, I know what you're
conversation,
saying. Right.
But you look historically at the great quarterbacks of all time. Tom Brady never looked like he was sweating. Peyton Manning never looked like he was sweating. Aaron Rodgers looks like he just stepped out of a cold shower and he's playing football.
And Joe Montana, what was his nickname?
Joe Cool. Joe Burrow. And even Brock Purdy has that where he always looks the same. Dak Prescott, every football game you watch him, especially against the good teams, he is dripping sweat like he just got out of the sauna. Like he's so tight, he's so on edge every game in those big moments, and I don't think I could ever trust him in those situations.
And then I know he got up there. I sucked.
That cogent analysis from Rob.
Chris, you think about it. I know you go in the commercial break. Just think about all the quarterbacks that you like. And
Rob G, Rob G, expect to hear that on First Things First next week.
It's okay. You can use it. You can use
I'm
it.
using that tomorrow.
There you go.
No site, no credit to Rob.
Nick and Wiles will have no idea what hit him when you drop that on him.
That's right. They'll be looking around. They'll be looking for Skip on the set.